All right, Rainmaker family. Today we have a very fun episode for you. This is something that's going to change your game when it comes to communication. We're talking about subconscious influence. These things have helped us out so much in business, in sales, but not only that, in working with people, talking to teachers, talking to subcontractors, talking to, the DMV person who's running the line. Like these things will help you out so much. I use these almost on a daily basis. I feel like when we travel, we're using them
Mhm.
at hotels. And so what we're talking about today, are 10 magic phrases that we use daily that are going to transform your communication. Once you know these and you know these magic words, you're going to be able to have a higher level of influence and persuasion in your life.
I remember when you started teaching me about like language and language patterns and sales and marketing and the power of helping people make powerful decisions. I was so excited to learn, and I've seen such a transformation in the way that I communicate. And I think you guys need to understand like my backstory. I felt like growing up, like I always needed to like stand up and fight for myself. Like I was the underdog, and to get my way, I really had to like bulldoze and like be aggressive and have aggressive language. And I think I saw people around me have to do the same thing. And so really, I felt like the only way to get my point across was to like argue or come in really intense, or like I need to get them to understand like I am fighting for this cause and be kind of a bulldog. And I have learned that no, you actually need to do the opposite. And so when Steven and I, like, we'll give you some examples in just a minute here, but from everyday scenarios, like, I think I used to feel like, Steven, you're being too soft, you're being too nice, like, people are going to walk all over you. But these little phrases right here, I think will transform the way you communicate with people and actually get your desired result sooner and faster just by using these little phrases that actually work. Like there's scientific subconscious things that go on that help you do this. And this isn't about like twisting people's arms. Like I think when you hear the word sales or marketing, there's a negative, slimy stigma behind that. And Steven and I, like, we are great marketers. Like we are great marketers. We have a program that we believe in so much and we are good at selling, but that doesn't make us slimy people at all. So hear me when I say like these 10 magical phrases are not to um, twist people's arm or make them make a decision that they don't want to. It's just about powerful communicating. And you can do that in a kind, loving, ethical way when you talk to, like we said, whether it's a prospective client or the contractor who you're trying to get to come over to your house to get your job done that you need. So I'm excited for you to have the revelation because it's been a big thing for me and I've seen it transform my communication.
Yeah, and really, I mean, sales is all about overcoming objections or
Mm,
often false beliefs. And
yes.
so, I mean, just past weekend we went to Tahoe, and our oldest son Kaizen, he's 4 years old.
Hmm.
He was so resistant to snowboarding, even though we
Yeah.
watched videos and we've been prepping him on this thing.
Yeah.
Hey, we're gonna go do a snowboard
It's
lesson,
gonna
all
be
this stuff.
fun.
And usually he's like really excited, but I've
Yeah.
never seen more resistance. Like, I'm not excited. I don't want to do it. And just like that morning of, you could just tell it was just weighing on him. He did
Mm,
not want to do this thing. So he had something in his head, a false belief around snowboarding.
mhm.
I don't know. He thought he was going to get hurt or
We
something. I
don't
mean, we
know, yeah.
skateboard all the time in the backyard. And so, like, I'm like, it's softer, all these things. And so, man, he just threw a fit, like, just absolute fit. We were that family trying to get the boots on. He's screaming, all this stuff. And it was to the point where me and Chelsey almost gave up. Like,
Yeah.
I looked at Chelsey, I'm like, do we just let him win this thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, our kids are gonna be like, sometimes like it's just not a good fit. But we're
Yeah.
big believers in like you at least need to try. Right. And so I'm trying to make some points that, hey, remember candy the first time you tried that? Like, what if you didn't try it because it was so sticky and like you just never tried and didn't know how good it was? What if snowboarding is
Mhm.
like the same thing? So I had to like just like play these like logic kind of reason like things in him
Yeah.
and emotional things and like, oh, you know how you love escalators? Well, there's this thing called the magic carpet. It's like an escalator. He's like, oh wow. And it's like, so like it was like hours of this, you guys. And long story short, like it was like one little win after another and a little bit of candy, a little bit of bribes, a little bit of hot chocolate, like if you do this, then we get this. And we ended the day with him snowboarding with like the biggest smile on his face,
Mhm.
just like absolutely so proud of himself. And I like get choked up when I talk about it because when I look at those photos, it was like such a huge like win
Mhm.
and that's sales. Like I know snowboarding's fun. I know it's good. I love snowboarding. I
Yeah.
envisioned me and Kai going to the mountain when he's older and snowboarding there. And so like it all hinged on this moment, And so I'm trying to sell him into this thing, but also
Yeah.
not trying to twist his arm either.
Yeah.
I want to make it good for him. And so it was about speaking his language and using some of these things that subconsciously kind of influence.
Mhm.
Right. And so there's certain language patterns or certain ways you say things that are just going to trigger people into like kind of a put their hands up, like not want to
Mhm.
do it, have objections come up. And there's ways that you can just diffuse those things and you can ease people into something because sometimes you just know something's going to be good for someone or you just want your way, right? Like sometimes,
Mm.
like we're going to use our contractors, I think, a lot in this example because you've been listening to the show, we've been working on this back unit project for like 4 years now.
No, not 4 years.
Yeah, it's
2
2024 and we started in
Okay,
2020.
well, 2.5
Yes, we
years.
started in
Okay.
2020, you guys planning this project, and
Yeah.
now it's 2024. So it's been 4 years.
Oh gosh.
I know.
That's a little depressing.
Yes. And so we've been really stepping in at the end because we've learned that our contractors are not really wired this way. They don't know how to communicate powerfully. And so we've really grown in the last 4 years in our business and our communication. And so we have really stepped in at the end here to just push things across the line. And we've been using what we're about to teach you so much. And it's been so helpful.
Mhm.
So if you want to go deeper on this topic, there's a book where we got all these from. It's called Exactly What to Say by Phil M. Jones. Exactly What to Say. It basically goes over 21 magic words or magic phrases. And we pulled 10 of the ones that we use the most. And we're going to be talking about those today. But this is a super easy read on Audible. I think it's like 2 hours. But it was one of the most impactful books around communication that I've read because it's so easy, actionable. And he gave great tips and strategies around
Mhm.
each phrase so you can try to incorporate them. And honestly, we just chose a couple at the beginning, like, oh, I'm going to try to say that instead of this. And they've just helped so much. So now these are just kind of default language patterns that we use in business, in life, and in relationships. All right, so let's start with magic phrase number one. Now you're going to hear us say like magic phrase number 1, 2, 12. We're going to skip all over because there's 21 magic phrases in this book. We're picking and choosing 10 of the ones we use the most. But magic phrase number 1 is the first one in the book as well, is this. I'm not sure if it's for you, but I'm not sure if it's for you, but. Okay, so what this one does is kind of interesting. It causes the listener's brain to kind of trigger oh, there's no pressure here, like
Mm.
feeling. But it also has this curiosity element that gets them to lean in, right?
Mhm.
And we actually, our rainmakers use this when they ask people for money. Okay. So we got this training from someone who raises money for these like multi-million dollar real estate projects.
Mhm.
And so I was asking him, how do you get people to like, i-
Give you
raise
money.
money and do all these things? What do you say? What's the script?
Mhm.
And he said, the key thing is this, you don't ask people for money. You say this, hey, I'm not sure. So let's say you call somebody, your friends, right? And you just say this, hey, I'm not sure this is for you, but blank, right? So what our rainmakers use is not that you'd be interested, but so it's very similar. We got it from the book and from this real estate training. And so you call your friends up and you're like, hey, not that you'd be interested, but I don't know if you saw, I'm starting this business on Amazon. I'm looking for inventory investors, but again, not that you'd be interested, but who do you know that might be willing to invest in blank, right? And so what this does is one, it asks people for referrals because like, oh, you know what? My buddy was just talking about doing that and they have a referral. But a lot of times if they're interested, because it doesn't feel like you're just coming straight at them, there's no pressure. They're like,
Mm.
well, I mean, I'd be interested, right? And then we train our rainmakers, don't just go for it right there. Just go, oh, cool. Like, maybe we can schedule a call later and like, follow up on that. Right. And so they schedule a call and then they talk about actually that person investing. And so this first phrase, I'm not sure if it's you, but it uses that subconscious, there's no pressure, curiosity hooks the person, and it offers like this rejection free approach, right? Like if
Mhm.
the answer is no, it's really easy, right? And worst case, like they're going to say, oh, yeah, I need to think on it, right? But it's like it allows them kind of the out, which just there's no pressure. And we use this one all the time.
Magic phrase number 2, and probably the one that I've adopted and used the most, is would you be open to? So, magic phrase number 2, would you be open to? And the thing is, if you were to survey a room full of people and would say, like, are you an open minded person? If you were to ask that question, 90% of those people would raise their hand, like, yes, I'm an open minded person. People want to be open to your suggestion or your idea. And so, this one, I I send it in text messages, whether I'm trying to move an appointment around. I feel like we do this often when we call like a hotel or are booking any type of service and there needs to be a change. We always say, hey, like, would you be open to us moving our table to sit actually closer to the window? Like, would you be open to us doing that? And of course, people want to say yes. And so
Yeah.
I love this one. I feel like I use it all the time instead of saying, like, hey, can we do this? Or, hey, we're going to do this. Like, would you be open to? And
Yeah.
people usually are.
And this one gives people the feeling of choice, but there's not, they're actually, you're leaning them into the option that you're suggesting, right?
Mhm.
Another one, like one of our business partners uses this all the time. It's kind of the opposite of that, which is, would you be opposed to?
Mhm.
There's a book, Never Split the Difference, talks about negotiation. It was written by this like, FBI negotiator guy. And it's actually easier for people to say no sometimes. So if you like this one, would you be open to? You can also use, would you be opposed to? And I remember like we used this one at the airport recently.
I think the best example Steven's referring to is we were traveling a while ago and I had an extra bag with me full of all like my breast pump. I was nursing still. And I knew that this particular airline was a lot stricter about how many bags you could bring on. And I had my normal too, but then of course I had like my nursing stuff. And so I just came up to the ticketing counter and I just said, hey, like, I'm a nursing mom, blah, blah, blah. Like, would you be opposed if I just brought this extra bag with me? I phrased it in some way. They're like, oh, no, you're totally fine. Just like leave it out. And I was really thankful that I went up in advance and like asked permission essentially to bring this extra bag because when I was walking onto the jet bridge, another flight attendant like flagged me down basically and was like, oh, you have an extra bag. And I was like, oh, yeah, your partner over there like told me I was good to go. I'm a nursing mom. And they're like, oh, yeah, she's good. And so I'm so glad that I already communicated in advance and got the yes that I needed or the no in that case, like, no, you're totally fine to go forward. Otherwise, it would have been an issue. And I have done it the wrong way before where I didn't say anything at all. And a woman stopped me and like made me take everything out and redo my bag. And I was kind of like, my arms were up. I was ready to go to I was ready to fight her because I'm like, I'm a nursing mom. How dare you tell me what to do? Like, you're clearly not a nursing mom because you wouldn't act this way, like
And
that's
she didn't
what
know
I
the
go
rules.
to. And she didn't know the rules. And it
Yeah.
bothered me so much because I'm like, how dare you,
Yeah.
But if I would have just come up in advance and not, I wasn't trying to hide anything, but I was kind of shocked that anybody would be so opposed to that extra bag of stuff that like I am allowed to have. You could hear the passion in my voice, but it's
Yeah.
just like that little bit of pre-framing would have set me up way better. So I learned and then I did the next time and I was totally good.
Yeah. So magic phrase number 2, takeaway, use the word open. People want to be
Yeah.
open, right? Or use the word opposed or against because people do not want to be opposed or against.
Mhm.
Hey, would you be opposed to me? I know like it's a super long line, but would you be opposed to me cutting because like blah, 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 right? So like, I'm not saying go cut in line, just use this. But like if you have a thing, like, okay, I remember like when Chelsey had shared the story on the podcast,
Mhm.
Chelsey was pregnant
Yeah.
and about to have a baby. And I'm in Mexico and she's like, hey, you need to come home.
Yeah.
Right. Like I had a line of like a bunch of mad people waiting for a rental car and I needed a rental car and I could not wait an hour in this line that was just dragging.
Yeah. You had already
And
been waiting
so
for a
I
while.
like introvert Steven had to like raise my voice and say, would anyone be opposed? Like
in
my
the
wife,
middle of the airport.
like I was like, my wife is having a baby. I have to make it to the hospital. Would anyone here be opposed to me cutting this line? And there's just like crickets. It was like so silent and so awkward.
What do you do
But
with
no
the
one's going to
stick?
say I oppose, right? And so then I'm like, okay, if anyone doesn't oppose, like I'm just gonna, okay, and I just like got in front of the line. And so like it was just one of those things like I had to do it. And like then people like kind of like, I think it caught people so off guard they just didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
But also like no one wants to be the person who's like, no, like
Yeah.
whatever. So we use this all the time. We just like that's probably one of the most common ones we use. How open-minded are you, or how open are you, or are you open to this? Or are you against? Are you? Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, got it. Let's go. Okay, magic phrase number 3. Okay, magic phrase number 3. This is a good kind of diffuser. Okay, when you bring something up, maybe there's a little bit of an objection that comes up. A good diffuser is this magic phrase number 3. What do you know about blank? Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So, for example, we're teaching how to source products all over the world for our program, but one of those places is China. Right. So we say, hey, we're going to launch products on Amazon, and here's one of our sourcing agents. They're sourced in China, super high quality manufacturing, ethical, affordable, all these things, right? And then someone goes, well, I would never source in China, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a good response is interesting. What do you know about sourcing in China, right? So it's kind of an interesting one because it kind of challenges. Sometimes people have these just beliefs that just kind of pop up, and it kind of challenges it in a really open way that is challenging their knowledge base a little bit. Oh, what do you know about sourcing in China? What do you know about China? Like, have you been to China? And so like when people start to really dig into this, again, we're not just calling people out, but we're just like, asking if there's like something there. Because sometimes it's not about, I would never source in China. Suddenly there's like a deeper thing there. And if we can get to that, then we can overcome that objection to help them move forward. Right. So this really avoids arguing. And this one, worst case scenario, you learn the basis of their argument and you're like, hey, that makes sense why you wouldn't do that. Or you can position accordingly to continue the conversation. So magic phrase number 3, what do you know about blank? Hey, Steven here. Sorry to interrupt your show, but I have an important ask for you. We love making our decisions off of data, and your opinion really matters. We would love to hear from you. Like, what do you want to hear on this show? Chelsey and I want to make this the most amazing experience for you. So what are the topics that you want to hear about? What are the guests that you want to hear on? What are the trainings you want us to go deep on? Like, we want to hear from you. So there's a number right here, 530-298-0747. Text the word podcast to 530-298-0747. You'll get a little autoresponder and it'll say, hey, what do you want to hear from us? And then text us back what you want to hear. We are watching those. We're taking a look at those. And so we would love to hear from you. And maybe your topic will end up on a show coming up soon. All right, back to the show.
Magic phrase number 5 from the book. Remember, we're kind of just pulling from our top 10, but they are numbered differently in the book. So this is magic phrase number 5. Just imagine. Just imagine. So you are helping paint the picture of what that could feel like. What could the desired result be like at the very end? And recently, although nobody said this to me, like, just imagine. And this is how I'm trying to make decisions now, especially when I feel a little bit of resistance or fear around whatever it is. So Steve and I were at a mastermind in Cabo, and one of the fun activities that we got to do was go ride. What are those things called? ATVs. Can-Ams. They're like ATV things that you ride in like the desert on the beach, Can-Ams. And I went, and we were in this like buggy thing with like 3 other dudes. And honestly, I was a little intimidated because I'm like, I'm just along for the ride. I'm enjoying this. I don't have to drive. Like, I don't have any desire. Like, I'm fine. But then when it came time for me to sit in the driver's seat, I heard this thought come in my head, like, just imagine, like, what decision would Chelsey make today? Like, imagine like the fun that you're going to have. Imagine the memory. Imagine like punching fear in the face of actually driving and being safe and that your hair blowing in the wind. Like, just imagine. And so I think this is one that not only you can do with people around you or with a client when you are walking them through a powerful exercise. I think you can do this with yourself too. Like, just imagine if you made that decision, how would you feel? How would your mindset be?
Yeah, this is good. I feel like we tried this with Kai and the snowboarding incident because he skateboards in the backyard, man, hold his hand, and it's so fun. So I was like, oh, just imagine. It's kind of like, how fun we have on the skateboard? Just imagine it's like that. But instead of like, if you fall, it's hard. It's like, it's soft snow. Just imagine how fun that'll be. And I'll hold your hand. You'll be safe. So I was trying to paint the picture. That one wasn't working for him. Okay. But this is a really powerful one. You can use like to motivation, right? Like to something good, or even away from pain motivation. Just imagine like what it's going to feel like when you don't have to work those extra hours every night after your kids go to bed, right? Just imagine. So that'd be away from pain, right? Or just imagine like what's going to feel like to be able to take off on a Wednesday and go to Disneyland with your kids. Like, just imagine, right? So it's helping kind of like lead to a end result. Maybe the decision they're making or the thing you're trying to, like, even with our contractors, it's like, oh man, just imagine when this project's all done, you could drive by this house and be like, oh man, that was a hard one, but we got it done. Let's do this thing together, you guys. Like, I'm trying to rally the team sometimes to get it done. And it's like that just imagine is a powerful thing because it paints this picture of something that sometimes in the moment is hard to see, But like if
Mhm.
you could see a little bit further past the weeds, it helps you make those
Mhm.
decisions.
And even just hearing it say you saying it right now, I'm just like, "Oh, there's this, like, this
Just
calming to it."
imagine.
Just
Like
imagine. I
friends are
think
coming to town, they can live in our back
yeah,
unit. We
just
just let them
imagine.
stay there. Like that'd be so cool.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's done. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, feels good.
So
Okay.
good.
Magic phrase number 6. Okay. Magic phrase number 6. Oh man, this one I feel like is such a hack when it comes to just like scheduling
Mhm.
things. I feel like people waste so much time in the back and forth. And so one way you can do this, like let's just use a contractors, for example. And we're trying to get someone to come out this week. A lot of these contractor guys, they're like, oh yeah, we'll come out soon, right? They just
Mhm.
give you like a really broad thing, and then soon ends up being like 2-3 weeks.
Mhm.
And so, or I'll get you the proposal soon. And
Yeah.
so we always push back on that a little bit.
Mhm.
And so magic phrase number 6 in the book is when would be a good time? When
Mhm.
would be a good time? So what this does is kind of cool. It prompts them subconsciously to assume there is a good time and there's
Mhm.
not another option. So this is really, I mean, you hear people do this all the time. Hey, when would be a good time to give you a call back? I think the better way to do this is actually give a specific thing.
Mhm.
So say, hey, would Tuesday be a good time to get me
Mhm.
back that proposal? That gives you a few days. Would you be opposed to getting it to me on Tuesday? See how I stacked two together? I was like,
Mhm.
wow, that was good. Okay. So would you,
Mhm.
when would be a good time? Or would Tuesday be a good time? Tuesday by end of the day be a good time? All right. I love the specifics on there. And again, we're framing it as like, not like, would Tuesday work for you? Because then they're thinking, oh, what doesn't work for me? Like, what
Mhm.
objections do I have? But
Mhm.
when you're saying, would it be a good time? You're just framing it as positive, and you're avoiding this big roadblock that people have, which is time, right? They're always going to make excuses. And so, what I like to do is either say a specific time or say when would be a good time. And when they reply, immediately schedule it, right?
Mhm.
Immediately go, okay, cool. Tuesday at 3, let's put that on our calendars now, right? And then follow up, and that gets it done. We've had to do this a lot with, like, again, the contractors and like all the guys we've been working with back here, amazing at what they do, but not great, schedulers or like admin, right? So, like,
Mhm.
a lot of it is driving this type of stuff is like, would this time work? Okay, awesome. And then following up with it. So,
Yeah.
when would be a good time? Magic phrase number 6. That should help.
Another way that I use this all the time too, Facebook Marketplace. I don't know if you've
Oh,
ever
man.
been ghosted or people can't decide on when they're coming. And again, you could still set all this up and someone could still decide not to come, and that has happened. But this gets someone to agree to a time frame. So it's always like, hey, is this still available? Yes, it is. When would be a good time today to pick it up?
Today. I like that.
Yeah, like I've done this
Yeah.
in so many different variations. But again, it's just like it's powerful languaging to get people to be like, yes, I'm going to be
Yeah.
here at this time. And so that you're not waiting around. It's not wasting your time. Again,
Yeah.
this is not manipulation by any means. It's not sleazy. It's helping you and them be all on the same page to avoid less frustration. So I love this one.
Yeah. So good. You can see how you can stack these. Like, they're like, oh, today doesn't work. And you're like, well, I have a lot of people trying to buy this product right now. Would you be opposed to coming tonight, maybe after work, so you can have it? I don't have to
Hmm.
pass it on. So you can stack these, and it's really going to help influence and get what you want. All right. So let's skip ahead. We're skipping 7 and 8. Those ones are awesome. You can check on in the book. Magic phrase number 9. I feel like, Chelsey, you have a really powerful experience. I feel like we got this email,
Hmm.
and after we got this email, I was like, whoa, like there was something there that was like so powerful. And we learned from it as business owners. This was like years ago. But you hit this one.
So the phrase is, as I see it, you have three options, or giving somebody, here's your three options. Let me know which one you choose. That's another way of phrasing it. But a couple of years ago, I signed up for this in-person photography, like styled shoot workshop. And it was during COVID. And so it got canceled. It got rescheduled, and then it kind of actually it got rescheduled twice.
Mhm.
And when it came time for the third reschedule, the photographer came back and she said, hey, I know like there's unforeseen circumstances. None of us could predict it is. I know some of you were going to fly in and drive in and different dates, but here are your three options with what you can do with your workshop credit that you've paid for. And she listed out three powerful choices that we were given to make. And none of them included a refund
Yeah.
from her workshop. And there shouldn't have been. You shouldn't be asking for a refund. That you like that it wasn't her fault,
Yeah.
like,
Well, I'm sure people wanted a
oh
refund,
yes,
but
they
she used
definitely
this
did.
powerful language to
Yeah.
avoid refunds.
Yeah.
And so she just said, like, hey, I have 3 awesome options. And they were all pretty good options
Yeah.
to take that investment and apply it somewhere else. I think it was like private coaching,
Mhm.
couple sessions. It was like a photo shoot, or I forget what the 3 things were, but like, this is a really powerful way for, instead of her saying like, oh, I'm just gonna be reactive and let people go, I want my money back, I want my money
Yeah.
back, right? Like she can say, I have 3 options for you. It
Mhm.
helps people narrow down the choice.
Mhm.
And it allows you to just kind of be impartial, right? Hey, here's the 3 options, right? And
Mhm.
you can display the choices in a way that also like favors your preferred choice. So
Mhm.
you could also say, and we'll get to this later, like most people have been choosing this option, right?
Mhm.
And you could say the option that like you want most people to choose. So
Yeah. And not even again, like when you hear language, like I used to hear language, like, you can present to them in a way where they choose the option that you want them to, oftentimes because it is the best
yeah.
package for them. Like I remember doing that with our videography business,
Oh
and
yeah.
it was like, here's the 3 package. Like I would recommend this to you because it's the most valuable, because it's the most, I mean, I feel that way about our Rainmaker mastermind. Like here's the different options. You can like, go and search it out all you want. You can go through our challenge, or you can join the mastermind, which I think is the best option
Yeah.
because of the results that you told me that you want. So again, it's not sleaziness, it's not twisting anybody's arm. It's just like, based on what you've told me, here's the best option for you, and here's what I recommend. But
Yeah.
I love that. It was super powerful. And it was just this moment of like, this is awesome. And again, I think that was created from, she didn't want people to just like ask for refunds or just, I don't know, complain to her, which I think she got a little bit of them, but it was powerful. It was a powerful email that still provided value. So that's important.
Yeah. One little sprinkle on tip from the book is you can say at the end of presenting the options, hey, of those 3 options, what's going to be easiest for you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Again, it's kind of framing that as a positive. Like, what would be good time for you? Which
Mm-hmm.
one's easiest for you? Right? It's like it's assuming that they're easy choices, right? And so it's just leaning people subconsciously into ease of making
Mm-hmm.
these decisions. Okay. Magic phrase number 11, we're skip ahead a little bit. This is one that I feel like, we use a lot as well. Is just like, when you're communicating to people, especially people you don't know as well,
Mm-hmm.
people are always like, I just feel like sometimes a little more on the defensive. And so if you
Mm-hmm.
can really relate with them and help them see you as like similar, or like we feel the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a great one. So magic phrase number 11 is like, I bet you're a bit like me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in this process with the ADU, the back unit that we're building, there's been some conflict with the contractors where we've been trying to step in and like trying to, push this thing across the line. And so when there's that kind of friction of like, us pushing and then, it's like just I always come back to this one. Like, hey, we're in this together. Like I probably bet you feel the same way I do about this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably over it. You probably are sick of this thing. You're probably at this point, you got paid months ago and it's just dragging on, and you probably want it done even more than I do,
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we just work together? We're on the same team here.
Mm-hmm.
And like, let's put the pressure on this guy, get him here on time. You do this part, I'll do this part. So I'm kind of like rallying back together, even though we're pushing against each other, we're kind of like finding that common like
Mm-hmm.
feeling. I bet you feel the same way I do,
Mm-hmm.
right? I bet you're like me in this, right? So this really helps them agree with what you're saying. Really helps like this really helps them agree with what you're saying and just like relate, right? And just like kind of equal
Mm-hmm.
the playing field so that you can be in alignment. Okay, magic phrase number 13. This is one I feel like just get in your repertoire, and there's a trigger that will trigger this one. And it's basically don't worry. Okay, don't worry. I like to say no worries. And so the best time you can say this is immediately after any objection. Okay, so like you
Mm-hmm.
bring something up, someone pushes on it, instead of just like pushing back, right? Because then defenses go up, just say no worries, right? Hey, so the investment to do this thing starting today, it's 6,800. Oh, like that's a little bit more than I expected. No worries. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What were you expecting? Right. So like no worries, just the
Mm-hmm.
adding that little thing in there. It when you say it confidently, it brings them back into a place of like from feeling out of control and having to push,
Mm-hmm.
like feeling in control, like you're gonna take care of them. Right. And this is just like a way you can love on people with your language and just keep it very relaxed, right? And helping them navigate the next step. Because sometimes that initial thing that comes up is just like a default pattern of
Mm-hmm.
thinking. Oh, well, I can't do that because my wife's not on the call and I just had to run decisions by her before we do this thing, right? Oh, no worries. Like me and Chelsey the same way. Like we have certain things we want to run by. You know, I don't know if she was here, what do you think she'd think about it? Right. So I'm just continuing the conversation and I'm starting to like dig into that thing more to see if we can help that person create a solution to get past it. Right. So no worries. If you just remember that one, it's a great one. Anytime there's a pushback, just immediately go no worries. And then you just kind of like talk and do it a little bit more, because sometimes as you talk more, you actually find a solution to go beyond it.
Magic phrase number 14 is saying most people, most people. And I think one of the best examples that I can give is going back to our photography analogy. We would sit down with couples and we would just kind of go through like, hey, most people choose this middle package before these reasons based off of what you just told me your desires are at the end. Remember, you're just imagining your wedding day, reliving those memories. Most people choose this one. And so it's honest. It is. Most people do choose this one, but it still allows them to feel like collective, like, oh, okay, other people are choosing it. So
Mhm.
therefore it must be a good option.
Yeah, I remember when we were enrolling Kai in his school, he's in this
Mm.
little school. The lady's like, oh, most people don't. We were trying to do one day a week because we were
Mm.
just trying to really ease into this thing. She's like, most people don't do just one day a week. Most people do at least two, you know?
Mhm.
And so we had like objections around that. And she was like, and it's because of this reason, this
Yeah.
reason, this reason. Finally, we just gave in, like, okay, fine, we'll try two. And if we
Yeah.
don't like it, we're going back to one, you know? But she used that most people thing.
Mhm.
And it was true. Most people do
Yeah.
multiple days. And now we see the benefit of it. So
Yeah.
she helped us get over our false belief by using this one,
Yes. Yeah.
probably just unknowingly. Okay, this last one is another one that I feel like we use a lot, and there's kind of some different remixes of this one. I feel like we've used a lot. So magic phrase, this is number 22 in the book. I thought there was 21, but this is 22, so there must be 22 in the book. It's could you do me a favor? Could you do me a small favor? Actually, could you do me a small favor? Okay, this concept is what we call asking for a small yes before a big yes. When you ask someone, could you do me a small favor? They have no idea what you're about to ask them next. But oftentimes, they will always say yes to that. And it's interesting because they've kind of already committed to doing whatever you're asking them to do
Mhm.
before even committing to it. But it gives them that little like small yes before you ask a big yes.
Mhm.
Right. And so, hey, I know this isn't interrupting. I see you're on the phone call. No worries. Could you just do me a quick small favor? Right.
Mm.
You're coming up to the desk at the hotel and they're like, yeah, sure. What's up? You know, and it gives them the yes. And then you ask the thing that you're really going for, but they've already really kind of committed to it.
Mhm.
And you just get them into momentum. Right. Another way that I've kind of done this, like there's been a couple times where we got to connect with some sort of support, like, person regarding a software or something like that. And it's kind of like time pressure, or I feel like travel is a big one. Like we're,
Mhm.
we're trying to call, the airline to figure something out. Like sometimes I'll phrase this as like, hey, I know this is probably a long shot,
Hmm.
but like I'm looking for a superhero. Like, would you be open to being my superhero today? Like, this is like kind of just a fun one, but like it kind of is different. And then people are
Mhm.
like, sure, like what can I do? And
Mhm.
you're just like, okay, I know this is a situation. I know there's no flight here, but I'm wondering if there's any way to get us on this thing.
Mhm.
One other way, I think this is mentioned in the book that you can frame something like this is actually framing it in the negative. So some of these work with the positive, like, could you do me a small favor? Right. Sometimes they work with the negative frame too. Is if the favor or thing you're asking for is like not that, it's really not that intense. Sometimes framing it as worse than it is makes it look better, right? So let's say you come to the concierge, you might say something like this, like, oh, you might hate me for this, but I tried to call early. I couldn't get in touch. We have young kids, and the only rooms available are these double rooms. Is there any way, like we booked two separate rooms, is there any way that we can rearrange things to get us like a connecting room so we can have our 4-year-old and 2-year-old basically in the same room with us? We don't feel comfortable having separate rooms. I know it's, so I kind of frame it as like,
Mhm.
oh, you're probably going to hate me for this, or you're probably like, this is probably a no. You're probably going to be opposed to this. I just like frame it that way. And they're like, oh no, like, let me see what I can do. Right. And it just like, again, it kind of puts their guard up a little higher, but then when you say it, it's like way easier than they
Mhm.
thought to do. I remember, I mean, we were at a hotel that like it was like this. We could not get in touch with them. It was a room block through a conference we were at. So you could only book like these rooms with like basically one bed in them. And we booked two rooms, but we needed them adjoining so we could have our kids, in the room. But there's only a certain amount of adjoining rooms. And so we had to kind of go to the guy and just say, is there any way, would you be
Mhm.
open? They use all these things
Yeah.
and have him basically move someone else. Cause I think we had booked like king rooms or something, like king beds. And so I was like, hey, maybe there's a way to like move some people like who haven't checked in yet, give them this room upgrade, and then we can have the adjoining rooms with the smaller queen beds, right? And so we were able to kind of like work it out where we got what we needed and someone else who
Mhm.
basically just got an unexpected room upgrade. So,
Mhm.
but it took some of this languaging to like really get him to get into action because he wasn't really a decision maker. He had to call like the hotel sales manager and like get this thing approved and all this stuff. And so kind of framing it that way was a way to help persuade and influence in the way that we wanted.
Mhm. And I think the biggest thing that for me is understanding these phrases, using them, seeing them work in action, but also coming in just like calm and be like, it's going to work out. Cause again, like I would come into these situations and be like fists up, ready to fight,
Yes.
and that doesn't really go so well, especially in the beginning. I'm not saying like just, get walked all over. Like that doesn't happen, but you can come in like confident and calm, and people respond better to that than coming in like super pissed off, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I'll share one bonus tip. This is not from the book, but you guys have probably heard of the law of reciprocity. The
Hmm.
law of reciprocity is like when you do something for someone, right? Like it's likely they're gonna do something back for you. Like you ever been to one of those restaurants and they like really hook you up? Like they give you
Hmm.
like mints and candy and all this stuff, like when you're like signing
Hmm.
your, thing. It's proven that if they give you something right there, they
Hmm.
give you a little mint, like you're gonna tip higher. And
Hmm.
so that's the law of reciprocity, like at work. And we've used this a lot with this whole backyard contractor project. We recently had someone who like we had paid to do a job and he ghosted us. He like disappeared. He did like 75% of the job. And then like we could not get a hold of this guy. The contractors couldn't get a hold of him. And so they kind of came to us like, hey, we need your help. Like we got to get in touch with this guy. So we did some Googling and we were able to find a location I thought this guy would be at. And so we decided, like, if I show up at this location, it's probably going to be an inconvenience to this guy. It's probably going to catch him off guard. He's obviously trying to kind of ghost us, right? And not finish this job. And we had already paid him, right? And so instead of coming in with like, my arms up, hey, man, we paid you, right? That's not going to work. We came in with a pie. We got a fresh pie. It was a pecan pie. I showed up with cute 4-0 Kai holding my hand. I got a pecan pie. And I'm just like, hey, are you this person? I say his name. He's like, yeah. Like, who are you? I'm like, oh, I have a pie for you. Like, I just start with that. Like, I had a pie for you. And I know it's probably inconvenience, but I'm blah, blah, blah at this address. And like, we're working on this project. We've been having a hard time getting a hold of you. So I just figured I'd show up with a pie and just say, hey, we'd love to finish the project. And like, is there any way we can get out there this week? And so he's like, oh, yeah, like, Tuesday or Wednesday work. And it's like we immediately got back into momentum. And
Hmm.
so, like, I think we kind of caught the guy a little bit trying to hide because he was kind of wondering how we found him. But the pie really helped, right? The
Hmm.
pie was just like, oh, like, wow, like, to do that, like, but it was just that law of reciprocity. I give you something, you give me back. And the cool thing is now he knows I know where to find him. So if he doesn't show up, I'm going to show up with more gifts. Right? I'm going to show up with some beer. I'm going to show up with whatever. Like, hey, man, let's get this thing done, and I'll just keep showing up until he comes out.
So there you have it. There's 10 magic phrases from the book, Exactly What to Say by Phil Jones. And this will really transform your communication with these magic phrases. And I can't wait to hear how you use them on a day-to-day basis. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. If you're not a part of our mastermind yet, I want to say I think you're missing out. Our heart here at Rainmaker is to create total abundance for you. That's why we're offering a free one-on-one family freedom design session for you, our faithful listener.
Yeah, if you want to hop on a call with our team, see if it's a good fit to build a business that creates time freedom for you, financial abundance, and helps you leave that thriving family legacy. That's what we're all about in our mastermind. You can grab a time on our team's calendar at rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind. Again, that's rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind.